Okay, I'm so excited to get started. I just wanted to thank you, Jenn, so much for coming onto the podcast. You are the second person I have interviewed so far. So I'm super excited to dive in and just hear more about your journey and your transformation and be able to really help and support the listeners through your experience. So if you want to dive in to share, your story, and I would love to hear more about it.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'd be happy to share. So my name is Jenn Colby. I operate a farm in Vermont, a farm and agritourism business in Vermont called Howling Wolf Farm. And I have been actively farming for about 22 years. And I would say well, by myself. I have a husband and he is supportive of my farm, but like emotionally supportive of my farm, but he's not a farmer. So,
Okay.
so I've been doing this largely on my own for many, many years, and raised a son and went to graduate school and worked a full-time job and farmed all this time doing
Wow.
all these things. And I really felt like, so part of the culture of farming in general is that you have to work really hard. And it's this expectation that you have to work really hard all the time. And and so I just sort of put that on myself and
Mhm.
just assumed that was, that if I just worked hard enough, then I would get somewhere. And I really wanted my farm to be a business. I wrote multiple business plans for it. The first business plan I wrote said, don't quit your day job, basically. I was like, stay where you are. Keep running a paycheck because the farm is not going to make money for you. And so fortunately it was a university extension position. So I was actually working with livestock farmers. And so that was the right choice to keep my day job and keep
Yes.
building skills and connections and practicing farming. And it was when I was so sort of my transformation away from I just work hard and I never get anywhere to just an entire mindset shift for me, and my
Mhm.
husband too. Started about 10 years into the farming journey, and I was in graduate school and was trying to better understand success and people that are successful. This is really about farmers, but it was, I mean, so much of this for me is like layered in with farmers, but it works and it's true
Yes,
across everybody. And this is what I've come to realize is that success is
absolutely.
success. People describe it in different ways, but it is the same whether you're a bricklayer or a financial whiz or a farmer or a whomever. And so I came across The Secret, and
Mm.
both the book and the movie, and I read through the book as part of my graduate work, just like trying to understand what the law of attraction is, and trying to understand how we could actually create our world. And I'd sort of heard about that, but nothing had really gelled for me until that. And so I read this. I made my husband read it. He we like listened to it in the car when we were driving to our
Yeah.
various jobs. Um, and we So when I finished grad school, I got a pay bump, which was great. But we had to make a decision: were we going to stay in the same place, or were we going to go to a new location and really do this farm thing for real? And um, and we had, a little old falling down rural Vermont house, and we had a pretty modest life and a really tough farming situation, like a bad location. And
Mm.
and so we had to begin to visualize what we actually wanted. We actually had to decide to go look at properties that we might move to, even though we had no idea how we were going to pay for them. And I have to say, that was like one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my life, because my thinking for so long was so limited, and it was such a like little
Yes.
box. And for years, my husband would say, "Oh, I'd love to do an addition on the house, and this is what I'd like it to look like." And I was like, I can't even talk about that. I can't even think about that because I have no idea how we would pay for that. So we can't talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so to stretch and say, I don't know how we're going to buy a new farm was the most terrifying thing in my life ever at that point. And what is wild about that, and it sort of started us on, Secret sort of started us on that journey, and we just kept trying to learn more about not just law of attraction, but also, abundance in general, and um, just stretching ourselves in what we believed was possible.
Mm-hmm.
That we we started Googling farms, like actual Google earthing farms, potential farms in our community. We got to the point of cold writing people who were property owners who lived in other states but owned property in our town.
Mm-hmm.
We just basically, we were just casting the net out to see what opportunities came to us. And some opportunities came, and it was, and lots of them were not the right opportunity, because that's what you find when you start to cast that net widely. You get lots of the things that you don't want. You say, no, thank you. I don't want that right now, but like, let's keep going. Let's keep looking for something. So it was really quite a process to get to the farm that we're at now, which we bought about 5.5 years ago now. So I would say that was like a big chunk of my transformation, was believing we could do a thing without having any idea how we were going to get there.
Wow, that is so powerful. I want to back up just a little bit, because you said earlier when you started this story about your journey to where you are now, and how, being a farmer, and you could say like being a fill in the blank, like being a mom of young kids, or being I'm a lawyer, being a lawyer, being fill in the blank, a teacher. I mean, we can literally just fill in the blank. Like, you have to work really hard, and that's the expectation. And how our expectations of what something is, it's actually a like self-fulfilling prophecy, because it comes true, right? And so
Right.
I want to kind of like talk about that a little bit, and how you were able to then shift into this idea of, okay, like maybe there's this part of me that can attract things into my life. And how you use, the secret and the law of attraction to kind of shift that perspective of like work really hard. Like, because you started that at the beginning, and then when you talked about your journey on finding the farm, it was like you started to visualize, and you started to, think about abundance and stretching. But like before you even got there, like, how do you go from like this expectation of like work really hard to then, okay, now I'm going to visualize, like, and so how do you like, can you kind of go back a little bit and just like share more about that part of the journey? Because I think for the listener, there, so many of us, they're going to be in that work really hard mentality. Like, they're still there and they're living that. And, for me personally, like I remember that exactly as well. And being an attorney, I was able to release that expectation for myself, and really change it, and not have to work so hard. I was working effectively and efficiently and productively, but not hard, like, to the point of like exhaustion and burnout that so many people experience when they have that work hard mentality.
Totally. And I feel like, and I will answer your question, to go back. But I was thinking about transformation and how it really comes in layers. Because that phase of learning about the secret and listening to the speakers in the secret, and I liked several of them sort of resonated more for me than others, and I'll tell you why in a moment, or how we followed up on it in a moment. But I realized that what that did was it made a crack. It was like almost not the very first layer, but it was an early layer. But it didn't blow the doors off. Like I feel like this transformation has really been a 10 or 12 year now series of here's another layer and here's another layer, and I'm peeling it off. And I don't know if we are doing the same thing as the expectation about work by forcing expectations on ourselves that we have to, like, our heads have to explode and suddenly we know all the things, like I've transformed. I feel like we need to be, at least my experience with this has been like, we need to be a little kinder with ourselves about that, because it's like there's a crack in the, and then there's a little wedge, and then the crack gets a little wider and a little wider and a little wider. And that's, I don't know, that's at least been my experience. So when we first started to visualize what we wanted through The Secret, and sort of step over that fear of we can't go look at houses because we can't possibly buy them, or we can't, like, that was just, it was so intimidating. But that in itself was a major breakthrough. And the more we walked through that door, the more we realized, I mean, it didn't change our financial situation, and it was a complex situation to finally buy the farm.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But once we got here, then we ended up, one of our favorite folks from The Secret was Jack Canfield. We love Jack Canfield. And he's the chicken soup for the soul guy and the success principles guy. And we ended up saying, okay, so the universe really led us down the path that got us to this farm that we love so much. And we'd been here about a year, and we're like, okay, so what's the next thing? Like, we're ready for the next thing. We accomplished this goal that was beyond our wildest dreams, this place. And what's our next goal? We don't know yet. What's the universe going to bring us? And what was wild was a Jack Canfield ad popped up on Facebook in Boston, and we're in Vermont. So it was only a 3-hour drive.
Yeah.
And we did a one-day thing with him and began to unpack more of those layers.
Yes.
Through working, we worked with him for just a day. My husband's actually in a success coach training program with him right now. And this was about 4 years ago. And since then, it's like, we just keep working. We reread the book. We like unpack some more stuff. We're like, we've changed many of our habits because of that. And so I feel like these are the steps in transformation, right? Like, we're all going to have different steps, and some of them are going to be steeper, and some of them are going to be more shallow and longer.
Yes.
And
yes.
I feel like we all are just going to have, I don't know, we're going to have the journey that we're going to have. But I feel like a completely different person than I was 10 years ago, like in all the best ways.
Yes, that is so amazing. And it's so true, because, I completely agree with that. I feel, as what you said at the beginning, again, of this part of your story, which is that, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Like, the change has to be this like 180 degree, I'm a new person. Like, I've got new habits, new beliefs, new thoughts. And it's like, take it slow. Like, it is a process. It is peeling back the onion layer by layer. And I think the most important step is just that next step. Like, what is the next thing that I can do? The smallest thing that I can do. I mean, one of my mentors, he always says, like, we think it has to be this like huge change, but it really, if you can just change the foot that you use to get up out of bed and put on the ground first, like, that's a big change. Like, because
that's a huge change.
It's a huge change, right? Like, if you always get up with that left foot first, put your right foot first down. You're going to change, like, it's going to do something, like, and it's
totally.
Like, we think it has to be this big thing. And it's like, it's just these small steps. And each step, gets you closer and closer. And sometimes, it's not just like up, 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 right? It's like up and then down and up and down. And it's like this weaving in and out. And it's like it's not like a one straight shot path. It's very fluid and organic. But I think just starting on that journey, and you can say, looking back 10 years, like, I'm a completely different person. Like, how many people can really say that, as far and say for the better, right? I mean, it's just so
Totally.
powerful to be able to even say that.
Well, and when I think about myself, so I'm 51, and if I think about myself of the last 10 years, so the change in me between when I was 31 to when I was 41, and the change in me between when I was 51 to or 41 to 51,
right?
like though yes, okay, I'm sure I changed between 31 and 41. But mostly I was a mom, and that has its own changes, and I definitely, evolved. But, same house, same job, same position, same thing, just same sort of just trucking along. And I felt dissatisfied, but I didn't know what to do with that. And I feel like a lot of people probably feel like that. As I talk to people, and I just have so many friends that I feel like they've been doing the same thing for the last 10 or 20 years. They're just sort of trucking along, and there's a vague dissatisfaction, but it's okay, I guess. And I was never satisfied with that, but I also had no idea what to do with that feeling.
Oh,
So
gosh,
like,
yeah.
isn't that sort of this like itchy sort of like, I want my life to be different, but I don't even know what to do to make it different.
Well, and I think, it's like you hit the nail on the head, because when we're going through life and we're feeling that way, like that dissatisfaction, like for most people, it's not enough to make us want to change. We need to have that, like, that really difficult, almost traumatic experience to like knock some sense into us and really wake us up. And that dissatisfaction that so many people have, it's like, it's not enough. People are just going through the motions, going through life, not realizing that there's so much more out there. Or maybe they deep down, they know, but they're like, that's not for me. Like, how do I even get there? How do I even start? Like, I've tried to change, I've tried to do things, and it doesn't work for me. And so they just don't even start in the first place. And
I think change is scary.
absolutely.
I think you're absolutely right that sometimes it's not traumatic enough to jolt someone, and change is just scary enough that it doesn't get us over the itchy. But it doesn't have to be big. That's what I've come to realize, is that tiny little things cause more of those layers, more of those steps to happen. We came back from Canfield and we said, okay, we're not going to try to establish all of the habits, because we know we're not going to keep up with all of the habits. There's too many, habits in the world to do. So we just try to adhere to 20 minutes of reading a day. And we weren't regular readers. I mean, I was at various points in my life, but not like self-improvement reading particularly. And after grad school, I just couldn't bring myself to read anymore for quite a while. Actually, I was like, I watched way too much TV. I just did way too many other things. And I was like, how do I just get myself to sit and read a book for 20 minutes every day? And we just started that habit, and we started to meditate for 15 minutes a day. And most of us can find 15 minutes a day. We don't necessarily pick the best times to try to do it, and that makes it harder. So I don't know. And then now those things are ingrained in us. So now we're adding other little habits, but they're little habits. I just added the high five habit after listening to Mel Robbins recently. And I'm like, that takes me 30 seconds a day. And I feel like a completely different person.
Oh, I love that. Yes. amazing. And I two things that you said that I'm just like, yes, so good. Like, it doesn't have to be this like big traumatic thing to start the transformation journey. Like, it can be, you said earlier, like a crack in the egg, right? Just like a little crack, just like a little bit that says, maybe I want a little, maybe I want more. Maybe I know there's more out there. And just starting to like search and look for, your answer. Like, what's your answer? And that you found that starting in The Secret, and that like, triggered this beautiful journey for you. And then also just with the like starting small with the habits, like reading for 20 minutes a day. I mean, I don't think I picked up a book after law school for a good 10 years, probably.
Right.
I was just like, I have no desire to read. Like, I read so much in law school, and I read every day for my career. Like, I don't want to read anything. And I would watch a lot of TV, and do, just do things to kind of like, it's like a numbing, right? It's like,
Totally.
you sit in front of the TV and you just kind of zone out. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with like watching TV, like I love watching a good movie and laughing and, feeling moved and inspired. Like, I love movies, but when you are sitting there every day for hours, just kind of numbing out after work,
Yeah.
it's like, there's so much more that you can do with your time. And I love the idea of just like 20 minutes a day. And, one thing that I did with incorporating reading is just saying, okay, before I watch a TV show or whatever, I'm going to read for 20 minutes. So it's like, that's my quote unquote reward, right? For
Yes.
reading the book.
Yep.
And then that gets the habit started. And then it's like, you don't even want to watch TV. You want to keep reading, but it's like getting the habit going.
Yes.
So how did you incorporate these habits of like reading 20 minutes a day and meditating for 15 minutes a day? Because I think, a lot of the listeners they might not even be doing those things. They might not be reading every day. They might not be meditating every day. And so if someone's like, how do I even start? Like, what did you do to start incorporating those habits into your life?
So I think that one of the legs up that I've had that not everybody has is that my husband is totally on board with this. So we've been this like accountability buddy partner thing, which I've been really grateful for. So even if it's not someone that you live with or your partner with, like an accountability buddy is huge to make sure that you stick with the things you say you're going to do. We really tried to pick a time of day that was going to be the easiest to be consistent with. So for us, we incorporated it into our morning, and it did require that we get up earlier. So that was a little tougher for him than for me in the beginning, because I was always an early riser. But we picked a time, and we said, okay, we're going to be downstairs by 6 o'clock. We're going to, like, I drink tea, he drinks coffee. We are going to meditate first for 15 minutes, and then we're going to have coffee and tea, and we're going to read. And it was like, we're going to do that. And we want to do it for a minimum of these times. So by just picking a time that was like a time cue, we actually do it Monday through Friday. We take Saturday off. We still read, but we don't meditate on Saturday. And then we actually have a yoga class on Sunday that we kind of treat as our meditation.
Sure, yeah.
So we do this as part of our regular weekday schedule. And then Saturday we just drink coffee and tea and read now. But what started as it was kind of an hour of power sort of thing. So it was 20 minutes of body movement, 20 minutes of meditation, and 20 minutes of reading. That's kind of evolved now. Once we did it consistently enough to feel like it was really ingrained, and it wasn't like overnight. I mean, I would say that was a good solid year, to really feel super consistent about all of that. We now have split out so that he goes and does body work for like exercise for like 45 minutes. And I go and do some piano practice. and some other things. And then we meet to meditate for 15 minutes. And then our beverage and reading time is like an hour now. And if we don't get an hour, we're kind of cranky about it. But there's no way in the beginning that I would recommend that to anybody. Like, no, if you don't read for an hour, like that's just too much. It's just that this has evolved into this nice little placeholder for us. That I was just reading No Fail Habits by Michael Hyatt. And
what is it called? No Fail Habits?
No Fail Habits.
Oh, okay. I haven't read that one yet. I'll have to check it out.
It's just a little short book. It's great. It actually came with my new planner for the year. And I particularly liked it because he was like, so when you are getting a habit started, you have to put some brain time into it. And so having cues and making it be short and making it be removing the things that are barriers. So like, putting your exercise clothes out by the bed, or, those kinds of things that make it really easy. That's while you're establishing the habit. But he's like, you'll know when the habit is established, because you'll miss it, or you'll be like, like grumpy because you're not doing it. And now I realize if I have a meeting, or if I have something going on where I have to go out before I usually, go outside to do animals before I usually go outside, like I only got 20 minutes of reading, darn it. Like I really wanted an hour.
I love that. Yeah. It's like instead of
becoming,
instead of becoming, or instead of being addicted to the overwhelm or the stress or all of that, it's like you become addicted to what is going to help relieve that and overcome that. And it's so beautiful how that switch can happen. And, I'm curious, like, what made you decide, okay, like we're going to start reading 20 minutes a day and meditating for 15 minutes a day? Like what was actually the thing that was like, okay, we're going to do this? And then like, what came up for you? Like when you started to, like, did you feel resistance? Were there days where you're like, I don't want to do this? Or like, how did that play out for you?
So we decided to do it on the way back from the Canfield day, because we'd gone through the 1-day training. He did a bunch of success principles. We'd had some, like, both of us had some pretty big personal barriers that were sort of lifted through some of the exercises that we did in that day. And so we spent our 3-hour drive home just talking through, okay, how do we do this? If we just start with this, hour of power thing, how do we do this? When do we do this? How do we do it in such a way that we both keep up with it? And in the beginning, it was really hard. And it's hard to go back to reading when you're used to getting up and running out of the house. It's hard to make time for those things. It's hard when you've been looking at your phone a bunch, like to sit and read full sentences. I mean, like you read so much for your work. And I mean, and me, it was like the end of grad school. I was like, I'm done reading for a while. I need a break from reading too. And so like looking at our phones and looking at TV, that's a different part of our brains. It's not the focused parts of our brains. It was really hard. It was like really hard to read not just novels or fiction, but to read sort of spiritual work, or to read self-improvement or business or success, or, there's some amazing authors out there now who write about these things like behavioral science in really great ways, like so much more interesting and readable. But it's still hard when you're used to like reading social media, and it's short and it's quick and it's got pictures. And so I think that's why 20 minutes that's hard enough, like, as a starting place. I mean, heck, 10 minutes, like whatever gets that habit sort of started. And meditating, we got a couple of different types of meditation books about like easy meditation. And that was so hard so hard in the beginning because I thought that I was doing it wrong. I think I've talked to tons of people who are like, oh yeah, meditating, that's great, but that's never worked for me. And usually it's because they just haven't done it for very long. We assume that like we're instantly going to be monks and we're going to be able to keep all of the thoughts out of our heads for 20 minutes. And it's so frustrating when that doesn't happen. And
yeah.
And we have to be kind to ourselves because we're not monks.
Yes.
We're not off in Zen gardens. Like we have, we have lives, we have these things that float into our heads. But simply sitting and sort of going to a quiet place and breathing for 20 minutes, that is a great start. And
yes.
whether or not you can blank sheet of paper your mind or, and I have to say, like, as our household manager and mom and lots of other things, boy, meditation is when you're trying to think of nothing, that's a perfect time for your to-do list to pop right in your brain.
Oh yes. Everything you have to do.
All the things.
And that's normal, right? I mean, that's
totally
normal and that's okay.
It's totally normal. And so it's interesting because I also learned a different kind of meditation called Ziva meditation that had a different approach that worked better for me, that my husband does a completely different kind of meditation than I do. We just do it at the same time. So my brain goes all over the place.
Looking out for what kind of meditation works for you and trying different things out. And
that is totally huge. Yeah.
I love that.
But it's a practice. That's the piece that we say to each other that I have to say to myself a lot is that's why this is a practice.
Yes.
We are not intended to achieve it. We are intended to practice it. And that just takes away a lot of the expectations for me.
Yes.
And so if it's a practice, it's okay if I do it badly.
I love least, that. Take off the pressure.
Take out the pressure. Just do it. That's the only pressure is the practice. Just do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So before we end today, I just wanted to kind of hear like what you've talked about, sort of like the early stages of your transformation, and then, how you got to where you are now. Like what stage are you at now? Like what, where do you see yourself like kind of growing and evolving at the stage that you are at now, or like immediately before now? I'm just curious, like to kind of hear from the beginning and the middle and then kind of like where you are now.
Wow. Well, that's a great question. Cause it really has felt like so many layers. So this fall, I was really struggling with, there's a certain podcast cohort you may have heard of, podcast course that some folks have been taking. And that has just sort of blown the doors off my sort of personal limitations and sort of my mental blocks. I thought I had figured some things out, and I realized some areas I really still need to work on about like self-worth and what it means to put yourself out there, and what it means to speak up, which is quite, I've had a public position for a long time. It's not like I haven't been in a public space, but it's very interesting to be out in front of that. So I do feel like we're all on this journey, and it's a path. And I feel like, okay, all right. So I just hit like another little upward piece.
Yes.
That I had some breakthroughs about this fall, and I'm feeling pretty good about that now, but I'm just sort of waiting for like, it's all about limiting beliefs, and I keep unpacking more and more of my limiting beliefs, and some of those things don't feel like they're limiting beliefs anymore, and then I find a new one. So I feel like that's one of my biggest things to keep working on is, where are my limiting beliefs now?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's so true. I mean, we talked about this kind of throughout, that the journey of transformation, it is in layers, and it's like when you step into a new role, whether it's like starting a podcast or starting a business or changing careers, whatever it is, or even, maybe moving up in your company, you're starting something new, right? All of these limiting beliefs can come up and these doubts and fears. And it's like, it is a layering process. And you might think like, I thought I already overcame all of these limitations. And now I'm like having to deal with them again. And it's like, yeah, it's just a new layer, a new level. And yeah, so it's just a beautiful process to kind of realize and understand that there are these different phases in our journey. And there's these phases where we're just like, woo, like I feel amazing and I'm growing. And then these phases of like resistance and like, oh, is this what I really want? And doubt. And it's like, okay, this is just the phase I'm in and it's okay. And, so I love that you're in that process and that you are shedding the limiting beliefs. And because it is a powerful process to be able to do that. And so it's something that I talk about a lot in my social media and with my coaching clients. And I'm all about the shedding of the limiting beliefs. Because I really do, like, I studied the subconscious mind and how, a lot of these beliefs are programmed when we're children and they come up, 20, 30 years later, and they keep coming up for us until we release them on a subconscious level. And there's so many different ways to release them, through meditation, through breath work, through different, neurolinguistic programming and things like that. So there are definitely lots of tools available for us to release, but just realizing that it is a process and giving ourselves that grace and compassion goes a long way. But I am excited for you, and it was lovely to have you on the show. And is there anything you want to say anything you want to say to listeners before we end?
Baby steps. I think it's completely fine to just start anywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
Doesn't have to be a big jump, just like use the other leg to get out of bed.
Oh, I love that. Wonderful.
Which is it's I love that. It's just, yeah.
Well, thank you, Jenn, and have a great rest of your day. And then do you have like any thing you want to share as far as like where the listeners can find you if they want to learn more?
Absolutely. So our farm actually has an agritourism aspect to it. So we host folks from all over the country. Our farm is Howling Wolf Farm. We actually have a glamping yurt on the property.
Okay.
So we go year round. We have a lovely gas stove up there right now. Yeah. So, and we're not far from an Amtrak station. So you actually don't even need to have a car to come here unless you want one.
Amazing.
So anyway, just wanted to open that out to the listeners. If anyone wants to come hang out on a working farm at some point, we'd love to host you.
Beautiful. And we can link that too in the show notes for the listeners to find you. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And we will talk soon. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome.